Good evening. Just while we're waiting to take the presentation just on board there, just by way of introduction, can I first of all congratulate Roland on the publication of his beautiful book detailing the rich history of the Lisbellaw Woollen Mill, and together with the Lough Erne Landscape Partnership, and thank them for their kind invitation to Headhunters Rail Museum to present a short overview of how the railway was integral to the establishment of the Lisbellaw Woollen Mill and subsequently brought economic and social prosperity to the area. So hopefully technology will serve us well. I think, Roland, you know what that is. I think it's your grandfather's crest with J.E. So just start. Yeah, Graham. Just starting off here. Okay. So I'm conscious that not having travelled on the Great Northern Railway and neither remembering the Woollen Mill or railway station below, that there will be many people in this audience who are more expertly qualified to reminisce about this than me. But hopefully this presentation, together with our railway exhibits, will spark some memories, and please have a chat with us later so we can add your recollections to our museum archive. Now, as Roland has already done, I think we can do similar for the railways. Just to check in with who we have in our audience this evening, could you please raise your hand if you remember the railway station at Lisbellaw? Fabulous. That is great. I think we're doing better. Could you put your hands up if anyone travelled on the Great Northern Railway to Lisbellaw? Great. Okay. And hands up if anyone who worked on the railway or had a relation who worked on the railway. Brilliant. Brilliant stuff. You can be our president as well then. We've got a president of our club as well, so brilliant. So look, if you're sitting comfortably then I'll begin. This poster from 1853 promotes the tuck mill at Lisbellaw on the present site of the mill, and manufactured horse rugs, and I don't know if you can see it there, it says here, railway wrappers, which I imagine were shawls. So even before the railway arrived in Lisbellaw, the Woollen mill here was making something for the railway. So Joseph Fraser prided it as being the only woolen mill in the north of Ireland containing wide looms, tenters, a screw press and falling stocks, and old blankets could be washed, scoured, raised and made as good as new again for 10 pence a pair. So as Joe and Roland have many mentioned, Porter Belial built the mill and was the instigator behind these early attempts to operate a tuck mill in Lisbellaw. However, he experienced several difficulties and it only operated for a few years. Now, not to be discouraged with the coming of the railway, Porter realised that he could rely on a constant supply of coal, wool and raw materials, in addition to a worldwide distribution network for his finished goods. The timing of the opening of both the Woollen Mill and railway station in Lisbellaw in 1858 was therefore no coincidence and were of mutual benefit to each other. Porter was a shareholder of the Dundalk and Enniskillen Railway and lobbied hard to ensure that Lisbellaw was not bypassed, as a station that was instrumental to his progressive plans for the area. Lisbellaw railway station was officially opened on the 16th of August 1858 by the Dundalk and Enniskillen Railway, with Enniskillen reached on the 15th of February 1859. So who says Enniskillen gets everything first? The golden age of steam had arrived, and Lisbellaw railway station was the gateway to the wider world, connecting villages, towns, cities and countries. The small rural village of Lisbellaw was now firmly on the railway map and would be leading to a greater economic prosperity. We should remember that in 1858, it was only a few years after the Great Famine and the widespread poverty which followed for many years. The arrival of the railway brought exciting opportunities both economically and socially, and J.G.V. Porter, who instigated the establishment of Lisbellaw Woollen Mill with the expertise of John Henderson and John Eadie, was an enterprising individual, as Joe has mentioned, who would have been acutely aware of the economic and social impact of the railways. The first timetable of the service for both passengers and goods on the complete line shows Dundalk, so you've Dundalk here, and right up here, and going right up into Clonus, Mutter, this is Maguire's Bridge, Lisbellaw and Enniskillen. So the timetable on the complete line shows the Dundalk and Enniskillen running 4 trains each way on weekdays, stopping at Lisbellaw. They left Dundalk at 5 a.m, 10:55 a.m, 3:25 p.m and 7:15 p.m, and Enniskillen at 5 a.m, 11:40 a.m, 11:15 p.m and 3:55 p.m. Now, given that such a journey would have been previously taken many hours and even days to complete, this was a remarkable advance in transportation. Now, the Dundalk and Enniskillen Railway would later merge to become the Irish North Western Railway, and further merge again in 1876 to become the Great Northern Railway Ireland, linking Lisbellaw with Bundoran, Belfast, Dublin and further afield. Other railway companies subsequently opened in Fermanagh, such as the Sligo, Leitrim and Northern Counties Railway, connecting Enniskillen to Sligo, and the Clocker Valley Railway, which operated from Maguire's Bridge to Tynan. So you can see Enniskillen right through to Sligo here, and then we've got the Maguire's Bridge right through to Tynan. Now, there's some of our younger audience here this evening who will be surprised to hear that Lisbellaw once had a busy railway station and will be eager to know where it was located and what its layout comprised of. You can see on this map that Roland showed earlier on where the line follows right along, and the railway station just up here on the top right-hand corner. Now, it's the location of Lisbellaw. You can see where the location of the station is. Now, this present-day photograph of the main A4, which bypasses Lisbellaw, the lay-by to the left, which you should be familiar with, located on the north edge of Knockanart Hill, is the site of the former railway goods shed, with the railway station opposite on the town side. So now, if you just remember that photograph in your mind and where we are there, and we will travel back in time to Saturday, the 7th of April, 1956, and this photograph, taken in almost the same location, shows locomotive number 98 at Lough Erne sweeping into Lisbellaw railway station with a 10:45 a.m. passenger train from Dundalk to Omagh, while those waiting to board the train get ready to look for seats. Behind the 3 passenger coaches is another string of vans for all the parcel traffic, meals and perishable sundries, not forgetting a few Henderson Eadie blankets. And to the left, we see the station name Lisbellaw set out in 6-foot-tall concrete letters, similar to Lisnaskea, Enniskillen, Trillick and Dunmore stations. Now, Lisbellaw railway station was designed by William Murray, architect to the Dundalk and Enniskillen Railway. It was probably built in the 1860s after it opened, and of great character and charm, with a delightful symmetrical Gothic revival design with high gables and curiously spiky plated windows within the station itself. There are ladies and gentlemen's waiting rooms, a booking office, toilets, living accommodation for the station master, and the railway employed a station master, a booking office clerk, porter and goods store staff, and was similar in design to Lisnaskea and Newton Butler stations, of which Newton Butler still remains. Now, Lisbellaw was a one-platform station with a loop alongside to allow passing trains. There was no signal cabin, and all the signalling equipment was located in the station. Opposite the station was the goods store, which facilitated the loading and unloading of wagons of coal, raw materials and finished goods for the Woollen factory. The rail siding to service the goods store was on a challenging gradient, which is not a favourite with the railmen who had to shunt the wagons. And here we see locomotive number 106 with the 4 p.m. Enniskillen to Clones passenger train on Easter Monday, the 2nd of April 1956, and Lisbellaw railway station is to your left, and you can see the goods store to your right. Now, John Caldwell Bloomfield, and Roland has mentioned already, the founder of Bleak Pottery in 1858, which is the only other large employer similar to the wool mill in Lisbellaw, also realised the economic importance of the railway for importing coal to fire the kilns and send the finished bleak product to the market with ease. He lobbied and practically paved the way single-handedly for the rail service to come to Bleak in 1866, and the pottery had its own siding to the railway station here, which you can see. Bleak Pottery and Lisbellaw Wool Mill were the premier industries of Fermanagh and proud exporters of the highest quality products worldwide. And when you saw the Henderson Eadie Lisbellaw Wool Mill label on a rug or the Bleak stamp on a piece of porcelain, you could be sure of craftsmanship at the highest level. Fermanagh was a largely rural farming community, and one can only imagine the new employment and different ways of working that both the mill and the railway afforded those in Lisbellaw. The farmers in the field knew the time of day by the sound of the locomotive whistle as it trundled through the countryside, and the mill's factory horn, which sounded for its workers, was widely heard and a constant reminder of the mill's working day. In his book, A Trip to Ireland by Edmund Truman, he recalls receiving an invitation in the summer of 1884 to the visit of the Reverend J.W. Kay, rector of Derrybrusque, and travelled by train. And he notes, we continued our journey passing Newton Butler, and at Lisnaskea, which is pictured here, and other smaller places, and finally arriving at Lisbellaw. And it was with pleasure that after our journey of 30 hours from England, we found ourselves welcomed by the Reverend Kay, who was waiting to receive us at the station. Wednesday morning opened dull but fine, and at an early hour we started for Lisbellaw, intending to inspect the large woolen manufactory there belonging to Mr. Porter and work by Messrs. Eadie and Henderson, a Scotch firm. By the kindness of the manager, we were conducted over the whole of the establishment and witnessed many interesting processes, from the first washing of the wool after it's taken from the back of the sheep to its ultimate conversion into the finest broadcloth. Many of the weavers were young women who stood at their looms barefooted. Some were weaving cloth of various colours, whilst others were engaged in producing woolen shawls or other goods. Specimens of manufactured goods for placing in the market were submitted for our inspection and appeared to be of extremely good quality, while the infinite lowness of the price asked was most astonishing. So what an endorsement. And this photograph shows the mule spinning of woolen yarns in Lisbellaw. The woolen mill required a constant supply of coal, wool and raw materials, in addition to an effective distribution network for its finished goods, and coal and goods wagons were shunted into the goods store at Lisbellaw, with large canvas bales of wool transshipped from throughout the world, from as far away as Australia. Goods for the woolen mill were collected by a horse-drawn, flat-bedded cart by driver David Baker, with a deep cart for drawing all the coal and coke from the station for the mill boiler. Coal was shoveled by hand onto the cart, which is no mean feat, and one can only imagine how the horse was steadied as it negotiated the steep gradient from the goods store to the mill. And later the mill had its own lorry, which is just for deliveries and collections. The really goods store was busy with finished goods from the mill. They were weighed, labelled, loaded onto wagons and prepared for dispatch by goods train. A constant supply of wool was required for the mill, and large bales were also transshipped from the west of Ireland via the Sligo, Leitrim and Northern Counties Railway, connecting to Enniskillen with onwards delivery to Lisbellaw Station. And here we see a photograph of Enniskillen Railway Station with the Coles Monument in the foreground. Specially printed labels ensured that the bales of wool were dispatched directly to the woolen mill at Lisbellaw via the regular goods train. Finished product was shipped by the rail from Lisbellaw to destinations throughout the world, including England, the USA, Canada, South Africa and back to Australia again. Railway records show that in 1934, 6,073 passengers travelled from Lisbellaw railway station, and by 1941 this has increased to 12,528. In 1941, the station was responsible for 1,246 tonnes of goods traffic, most of which was from the woolen mill. Large weaving machinery, packaging, dyes and other raw materials was also transported by train, and this mill manuscript from the factory of dye formula refers to the recipes including such ingredients as madder, liquid, cudber, chrome, alum and chemic. Specialist staff from Scotland, instrumental to the mill's success, frequently travelled by train and resided in the town. The wool mill was the beating heart of the village and played its part during World War I and II with the production of thousands of army blankets, and until the early 1950s, large quantities of serge for battle dress. The railway played its part too and was instrumental in transporting supplies, and thousands of US soldiers were training in preparation for the Normandy landings in over 20 army bases throughout Fermanagh. This painting depicts the US soldiers departing from Enniskillen railway station in May 1944, by which time many had married local girls. From 1929 to 1936, Henderson Eadie operated a mill in Cluny, County Sligo, in order to reduce punitive trade tariffs, and the manufacturing process such as washing, dyeing, carding, spinning continued to carry to Lisbellaw, while the spun yarn was then transported by train to Enniskillen and on the Sligo Leitrim Railway to Cluny for weaving and finishing, and the mill lorry was also used during this operation as well. In these photographs you can see the woolen bales being loaded at the sheep farm in Australia, and then at arrival at the goods store in Enniskillen, where they're loaded onto the mill lorry for onwards delivery to the factory or transshipped directly to Lisbellaw by rail. The depressed conditions faced by the British industry after the First World War was further exacerbated by the slump of 1929 to 33. No industry was left untouched, and during this period there was a concerted effort to support home industries such as the woolen mills. And these postcards and posters were produced by the mill stating, "Support home industries and do yourself a good turn at the same time. We are in a position to give you a better value for your money than you're likely to get elsewhere." And in the early days, Lisbellaw Quarry was also an important source of ballast or stone for the GNR line, and other civil contracts with wooden wagons used or transported were required. The railway Woollen Mill gave much needed employment in Lisbellaw and a job for life, and entire families, generations worked in each and took pride in their work. Both the mill and the railway had their dangers, and safety was paramount, albeit that health and safety regulations were not as stringent as they are today. This poster displayed in Wool Mills reminded employees to use a brush when cleaning the looms and not to put themselves at risk. Mill employees were exposed to the deafening sound of the weaving frames, driven by belts and pulleys, powered from the turbine beneath the floor, the noise of the shuttles on the weaving looms, rattling back and forth at great speed, the heat of the dye house, dust generated from weaving processes, and risks involved in cleaning the waste material from around the machines while they were still operating. Railway employees also experienced similar challenges within their work. Slide here. So railway employees also experienced similar challenges within their work environment, with firemen and drivers on the local footplate shoveling tons of coal on a cramped local footplate and exposed to coal dust, heat, boiler pressure, noise, shunting and other dangers. If you were a driver and fireman, this was the view you would have had from the locomotive window as you left Lisbellaw railway station and headed for Maguire's Bridge. And maybe some can just visualise that in the scene today. In R.M. Arnold's The Golden Years of the Great Northern Railway, he notes, Lisbellaw signalman Alec Lindsay had no signal cabin like other stations, and the signalling staff was issued from the booking office. Decent, gruff and a little deaf, Alec later had two sons shunting to Enniskillen, and he took a special pride in something rather rare today, spotlessly clean toilets. On one occasion, he was waiting to present them up in a bucket to a passenger who on a previous visit had failed to leave them as she had found them. On another, a Yankee visitor had been criticising the poor amenities at Lisbellaw as he considered them at both Lisbellaw village and station. He next asked for the toilet, and Alec indicated the notice. Gentlemen along the platform, and he says, pay no attention to that, he said, just go in. So Henderson and Eadie's Wool Mill was the main source of income for both the railway station and the village, and the firm had its own private local telephone exchange service from 1902, which linked the mill with the railway station, shops and post office. The railway allowed a greater movement of goods and people, and newly married couples were delighted to receive a present of a Henderson and Eadie woven wool rug or blanket and had their wedding breakfast so as they could catch the early train to Belfast or Dublin for their honeymoon, with guests gathered at the railway station to see them off. The railway station was a place of great happiness, welcoming friends and family, but also sadder occasions saying farewell to those going to war, leaving to seek work elsewhere or emigrating for a new life, never to return to Lisbellaw. Locals were familiar with the Bundoran Express, with its distinctive name board, which operated from Dublin to Bundoran from June to August, and largely patronised by pilgrims visiting Lough Erne in Pettigo. It sped through Lisbellaw, as the express was not supposed to stop in Northern Ireland due to a customs arrangement. In 1952, a record of almost 22,000 pilgrims travelled by train from Dublin via Lisbellaw to Pettigo. The railway provided shops in Lisbellaw with their freshly baked bread, daily newspapers, first and second post deliveries and other supplies. It transported milk to the creamery, livestock to market. Children used the train to attend schools in Enniskillen and look forward to the annual Sunday school excursions to Bundoran. There were railway tickets for every type of passenger and excursions, including a dog ticket, a pram ticket, bicycle ticket and those on military service. In 1907, the Henderson and Eadie arranged a special train excursion for all the staff from Lisbellaw Woolen Mill to the International Exhibition in Dublin, which is intended to improve the trade of Irish goods and attended by over 2.75 million visitors. So you can imagine that for many workers, this was the first time that they had left County Fermanagh, and it was a memorable occasion for all the workers. The more adventurous locals could travel further afield, and the Great Northern promoted excursions far and wide. You could spend a Sunday at the seaside with the Bundoran bracing breezes. You could enjoy the pantomime, Jack and Beanstalk, at the Grand Opera House in Belfast in 1939. You could visit Enniskillen for the Royal Jubilee celebrations on Monday the 6th of May 1935. You could support Batora at the Rugby Football Schools Cup semi-final in 1940, which they won and went on to win the Schools Cup with a special train from Enniskillen to Belfast, bringing the team and supporters. or you can enjoy a motorboat cruise on Lower Lough Erne. The railway's closure on the 30th of September 1957 was felt greatly by the entire community, with a large crowd gathering to Enniskillen railway station to see the last train depart. Small towns and villages like Lisbellaw particularly felt its loss, which had helped connect their communities, providing an accessible transport network. The closure of the railways in Fermanagh had economic and social consequences. It's a sad photograph many of you will have seen before of Lisbellaw station after it was closure on the 30th of September, with the grass growing up between the tracks and on the platform. The dilapidated fittings at the station, with the lonely person standing forlornly dreaming of the train that will never come. Unfortunately, nothing remains of Lisbellaw railway station, which was demolished after the railway's closure and the railway alignment used to create the A4 Lisbellaw bypass. The former railway goods store is now a lay-by, and although the name Station Road survives, it leads to the council recycling centre rather than the railway station. The Woollen mill survived the railway, but advances in manufacturing, new materials and foreign imports meant that its days were number 2, closing in 1965. However, I must conclude with a photograph of Lisbellaw railway station in its heyday, and the sound once more of the Great Northern train leaving the station, and quite a sight. And who knows, with a rail, or the island, or there's a rail review on at the moment, we might have railways returning at some stage in the future. We'll look out for that. But some items we have from Headhunters Rail Museum next door in the little room to the side, and you can see a few of the artefacts from Lisbellaw station that have survived, including the station master's chair. And you might say, well, how do we know it's the station master's chair from Lisbellaw? Because on the back of the chair it is stamped in the wood, Lisbellaw station, so that's how we know. They stamped everything. We have the railway platform sign from Lisbellaw, signalling staff from Lisbellaw to Maguire's Bridge, along with a selection of other interesting items from the Great Northern Railway. Thank you very much.